Hello, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham, and we're coming to you live from Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the U.S. and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. Gold and silver sink for a second day, triggering mixed reactions in the Asian market. Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Taipei drop, while Singapore, Seoul, and Jakarta rise. Ukraine unveils an upgraded sea drone known as the Sea Baby, which it says can operate anywhere in the Black Sea. Kyiv says the unmanned vessel could force a strategic shift in Russia's naval operations. Clashes erupt in Dublin as protests outside a hotel housing migrants turns violent. Hundreds throw bricks, bottles, and fireworks at police officers after reports of a sexual assault in the area. Peru's interim president announces a state of emergency in the capital city of Lima and a neighboring port city after weeks of anti-government protests over corruption and organized crime. And French President Emmanuel Macron orders heightened security at the Louvre as the Paris Museum reopens its doors to visitors after a shocking $102 million heist. We began in New York City, where a federal immigration enforcement sweep turned chaotic on Tuesday afternoon as street vendors, bystanders, and protesters clashed with authorities. The operation, led by Immigration and Customs Enforcement and supported by Border Patrol and other federal officers, targeted vendors accused of selling counterfeit goods in a bustling Manhattan neighborhood. The protesters quickly surrounded the officers, attempting to block their vehicles from leaving, while chanting slogans such as "ICE out of New York."
ICE out of New York! ICE out of New York! Across the street! In 10 minutes! In 10 minutes! We'll see you there if you want to help!
ICE is trying to kidnap our neighbors off the streets.
That's Walker and Harold.
I was standing in a crosswalk. We cannot stand as New Yorkers for this to happen.
The agents responded by pushing some protesters to the ground and threatening them with detention. Additional federal officers in combat gear arrived with long guns and a military tactical vehicle, making further arrests. A spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security described the operation as a targeted enforcement action against criminal activity relating to selling of counterfeit goods. The spokesperson also reported that at least one individual was arrested for assaulting a federal officer. However, the exact number of vendors detained remains unclear.
Federal partners, including FBI, DEA, ATF, IRS, CI, and CBP, conducted a targeted, intelligence-driven enforcement operation on Canal Street in New York City, focused on criminal activity relating to selling counterfeit goods.
Local politicians condemned the raids, voicing opposition to the show of force and aggressive tactics used against bystanders.
The challenges around vending on Canal Street are real and must be addressed. But federal agents storming our streets and targeting community members is not the solution.
Mayor Eric Adams and the NYPD stressed that the city had no involvement in the federal operation. Adams went on to reiterate that resources should focus on violent criminals, not undocumented New Yorkers pursuing the American dream.
We gather details about the situation. New Yorkers should know that we have no involvement. Our administration has been clear that undocumented New Yorkers trying to pursue their American dreams should not be the target of law enforcement, and resources should instead be focused on violent criminals.
New York's Governor Kathy Hochul and mayoral candidates Zohran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo also condemned the raid. They described the events as politically motivated and overly aggressive, with Mamdani calling it authoritarian theatrics and Cuomo calling it an abuse of federal power. The raid is part of a broader pattern of ICE operations in immigrant communities nationwide, often met with protests. Across America, ICE has increasingly detained immigrants without criminal records, with at least 170 U.S. citizens held in 2025. Now, past operations have drawn scrutiny for excessive force, including pepper spraying journalists and body slamming individuals. Now, the final mayoral debate takes place tonight, which will certainly provide openings for both candidates to speak on the raids occurring throughout the city. Rest assured, the city's electorate, especially its migrant community, will be watching closely, knowing that the next encounter could erupt at any moment. Plans for a meeting between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, which seemed certain just a few days ago, has now been put on hold. The official confirmation came from the White House on Tuesday, a quick about-face only days after Trump himself said that the two leaders would meet within 2 weeks in Budapest. Trump later explained that he didn't want what he called a wasted meeting.
No, I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens. But we did all of these great deals, great peace deals. They're all peace deals, agreements, solid agreements, every one of them. But this one, and I said, go to the line of battle, the battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home, and everybody takes some time off, because you got two countries that are killing each other. Two countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week. So we'll see what happens. We haven't made a determination.
And President Trump indicated that a key sticking point remained Moscow's refusal to cease fighting along the front lines. Russia, however, said that preparation for a summit between President Trump and Putin was still ongoing. And Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban also said that preparations are too ongoing, adding that the date for a meeting has not been decided. Now, the reversal comes shortly after both leaders described their last phone conversation as productive. And during that call, the two discussed the possibility of holding a second face-to-face meeting in Budapest to explore ways to end the war in Ukraine. President Putin was reportedly asked to withdraw Russian troops from parts of Ukraine in exchange for full control of Donetsk, a region that Russia has long sought. Now, initially, President Trump seemed open to considering the idea, but on Sunday, he stated that Donetsk should remain as it is and both sides should stop fighting and return home. The latest announcement comes after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio held talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Monday. The two officials were expected to meet in person to prepare for the Budapest summit. However, a White House official later confirmed that no additional meetings were necessary. The official described the call between Rubio and Lavrov as productive, though it did not result in any concrete progress toward an actual summit. Lavrov, meanwhile, told reporters that Russia's position on Ukraine remained unchanged and that it continued to support the framework established during earlier talks between Trump and Putin in Alaska.
I want to officially confirm it. Russia has not changed its position. Compared to concepts reached during the lengthy Putin and Trump talks in Alaska, these concepts are based on understanding reached there and then, the one that President Trump voiced pretty neatly when he said that we need lasting and sustainable peace, not the immediate ceasefire that will lead to nothing. We stay completely true to this formula. And I confirmed it yesterday talking to Marco Rubio.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Russia appeared less interested in negotiations after Trump postponed the decision on supplying Tomahawk cruise missiles to Kyiv.
Instead, Russia is once again doing anything to avoid diplomacy. And as soon as the question of long-range weapons for us, for Ukraine moved away, Russia almost automatically became less interested in diplomacy.
Now, Zelensky on Wednesday also said that President Trump's plans for Ukraine and Russia to stop at the current front lines is a good compromise. On Tuesday, reports suggested that Ukraine and several European allies were working on a new 12-point ceasefire plan. The proposal is said to resemble the 20-point framework the U.S. had used for the conflict in Gaza. Meanwhile, Ukraine on Wednesday reported that Russian strikes killed 6 people and forced power outages nationwide. Now, whether this pause in talks will lead to a renewed effort for peace or a prolonged standstill remains to be seen. And moving on, Paul Ingrassia, President Trump's nominee for special counsel, has withdrawn after a storm over racist texts. Politico reported that Ingrassia called Martin Luther King Jr. Day the seventh circle of hell. He also said he had a Nazi streak and used an Italian slur for black people. In another text aimed at Vivek Ramaswamy, he wrote, quote, "Never trust a Chinaman or Indian, never," end quote. Back in September, he was already under fire because of his misconduct. And more details in our next report on how the Trump aide derailed his political career.
Paul Ingrassia, President Donald Trump's pick to lead the U.S. Office of Special Counsel, has withdrawn from consideration after reports surfaced that he sent racist and inflammatory text messages. The 30-year-old lawyer, already facing scrutiny over his lack of experience and a prior misconduct probe. Ingrassia confirmed his withdrawal in posts on Truth Social and X on Tuesday evening, saying he lacked enough Republican votes to move forward. His exit followed a Politico expose detailing a string of racist, anti-Semitic, and bigoted messages allegedly sent by Ingrassia in a group chat with fellow Republicans. In the texts, he reportedly described himself as having a Nazi streak and allegedly declared that Martin Luther King Jr. Day should be tossed into the seventh circle of hell. He also reportedly used an Italian slur for black people, writing, "No malignant holidays," adding every single one needs to be eviscerated. Then, in January 2024, he allegedly wrote about former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, "Never trust a Chinaman or Indian." The comments, published Monday, quickly detonated Ingrassia's already fragile nomination. And by Tuesday afternoon, Senate Majority Leader John Thune said plainly he's not going to pass, urging the White House to pull the nomination. Senators Ron Johnson, Rick Scott, and James Lankford joined him in opposition, with Scott calling the remarks wrong and anti-Semitic.
I can't imagine how anybody can be anti-Semitic in this country. It's wrong. It never should have got this far.
Even the main Jewish group that had supported Ingrassia, the Zionist Organization of America, abandoned him. Its president, Morton Klein, told CNN, "If these text revelations are accurate, I have no choice but to immediately withdraw my support." Klein said that in an age of rising anti-Semitism, even a hint of racism or anti-Semitism can't be tolerated. Ingrassia's attorney, Edward Andrew Paltzik, questioned whether the messages were authentic, suggesting they might have been AI-generated or taken out of context. He claimed that if real, they were self-deprecating and satirical humor, mocking liberals who routinely call MAGA supporters Nazis.
In this age of AI, authentication of allegedly leaked messages, which could be outright falsehoods, doctored or manipulated, or lacking critical context, is extremely difficult. What is certain, though, is that there are individuals who cloak themselves in anonymity while executing their underhanded personal agendas to harm Mr. Ingrassia at all costs. We do not concede the authenticity of any of these purported messages.
However, the Politico report wasn't the first controversy linked to Ingrassia. Earlier this month, the outlet revealed that the Department of Homeland Security investigated him for alleged misconduct involving a female colleague. He reportedly canceled her hotel room booking before a work trip, forcing her to share a room with him. She later retracted her complaint, but told officials the situation made her uncomfortable. Ingrassia declined to comment, but his attorney denied the allegations.
Mr. Ingrassia has never harassed any coworkers, female or otherwise, sexually or otherwise, in connection with any employment.
Ingrassia's background had raised alarms long before the scandals broke. Admitted to the New York bar only last year, he was considered a novice for a position historically held by veteran, nonpartisan lawyers. Instead, Ingrassia brought a history of extremist rhetoric. He had previously praised white nationalist Nick Fuentes, called for martial law after the 2020 election, and publicly argued that straight white men were the most intelligent demographic. Trump nominated Ingrassia in June, but his hearing was delayed after questions about his conduct and views. But by the time the racist text surfaced, his nomination had no path forward. And for Paul Ingrassia, it was over. A few texts, a few words were enough to end a nomination.
And continuing with palace intrigue, we now move to a former administration ally, Elon Musk, whose NASA's leadership debate has erupted into public view, fueled by a high-profile spat between acting NASA chief Sean Duffy and the billionaire himself. The conflict came to a head this week after Duffy, who also serves as the U.S. Transportation Secretary, suggested that other companies could compete with Musk's SpaceX for a key lunar mission. In an interview with CNBC, Duffy said that SpaceX, which holds a $2.9 billion contract to build a lunar lander for NASA's Artemis 3 mission, was behind schedule. He warned that delays could jeopardize the agency's efforts to return humans to the moon before China, which is targeting a crewed lunar mission by 2030.
Not going to wait for one company. We're going to push this forward and win the second space race against the Chinese. Get back to the moon, set up a camp, a base, and from there we're going to figure out how we can get to Mars.
Duffy also raised the possibility of folding NASA into the Department of Transportation, suggesting that the agency might benefit from cabinet-level oversight. The Tesla CEO, who's known for his fiery replies, then took to X and responded with a series of sharp posts targeting Duffy. He called the acting administrator Sean dummy, questioned his intelligence, and posted memes mocking Duffy's past as a champion lumberjack speed climber. Musk also argued that SpaceX was far ahead of other companies in the space industry and predicted that Starship, the company's heavy-lift rocket, would ultimately handle the entire moon mission. Now, the feud also touched on the ongoing question of who, in fact, will lead NASA permanently. President Trump had previously nominated Musk ally Jared Isaacman to head the space agency, but the nomination was abruptly withdrawn. A report suggests Isaacman now could be reconsidered for the role, while Duffy is actively involved in vetting candidates and shaping the agency's future. Now, Musk has in fact used X to push for Isaacman's renomination and criticized Duffy's proposal to fold NASA into the Transportation Department as a threat to U.S. dominance in space. Now, despite the tension, Duffy acknowledged Musk's contributions. In fact, he tweeted that he appreciated Musk's passion and emphasized the importance of competition. And as the Artemis timeline faces technical and scheduling challenges, the battle over NASA's leadership and the fate of its lunar ambitions remains unsolved. With Duffy suggesting structural changes, Musk rallying support for a former nominee, and China advancing its lunar program, the space race is intensifying, leaving the next chapter of America's lunar mission hanging in the balance. And finally, Iceland, the land of fire, ice, and zero mosquitoes, has finally been bitten by reality. For centuries, Iceland has been one of the few places on Earth where mosquitoes dared not tread. Scientists say the country's first mosquitoes, however, have officially landed, and it just might be climate change's smallest, most annoying victory yet. The country's first ever mosquito sightings raised fresh alarms about the pace of climate change in the Arctic. Here's a report.
For centuries, Icelanders have lived blissfully mosquito-free. Their summers were warm enough for tourists, not for disease-carrying pests. Their winters, absolutely inhospitable. But all good things and all mosquito-free myths must eventually come to an end. On October 16th, an insect enthusiast from the garden town of Choose spotted something unusual flitting through the twilight. What appeared at first glance to be just another fly turned out to be something far more sinister. A mosquito. The insect enthusiast didn't waste time. He collected the tiny intruder and called an entomologist at the Natural Science Institute of Iceland. The next day, the pair captured 3 mosquitoes, 2 females and 1 male. Tests revealed them to be Culiceta annulata, a cold-tolerant species already common across Europe, Northern Africa, and Siberia. This species, capable of surviving freezing winters in sheltered areas, may just be the perfect guest for Iceland's changing climate. How they arrived is still a mystery. Scientists, naturally, are keeping a closer eye on the mosquitoes to see if they truly plan to settle in Iceland. Of course, the appearance of mosquitoes in Iceland is no laughing matter. Climate change is steadily warming the island, 4 times faster than the rest of the northern hemisphere.
So at the moment, glaciers cover approximately 10% of Iceland, and the glaciers are presently retreating as a result of current-day global warming. So this can influence volcanism in a number of ways.
This not only opens the doors to just mosquitoes, but also the disease they carry. Malaria, dengue, chikungunya, and Zika aren't exactly on the Icelandic bucket list. Mosquitoes thrive in warmth and humidity, and the world is becoming their playground. From the UK discovering Egyptian mosquito eggs this year, to Asian tiger mosquitoes invading Kent, these tiny, buzzing invaders are proving that no one is immune. And now, the country's once mosquito-free reputation has been officially compromised. Iceland may still have glaciers, geysers, and midnight suns, but it now has something far less majestic: mosquitoes. Tiny and tenacious, these insects serve as a sharp reminder that climate change is not a distant threat. It's biting at our ankles, quite literally. For Icelanders, it may be time to invest in some serious bug spray.
And from all of us here at Firstpost America, we certainly thank you all for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks everyone for watching.